My name is Miriam Kaba. I lived in Chicago for over 20 years, and during that time, I had of course heard of and been interested in the life and legacy of Ida B. Wells Barnett. I hadn't, however, heard of the Ida B. Wells Monument Project until early April 2018, when I saw Michelle Duster tweet about it. I learned that a group of volunteers, which included some members of Wells Barnett's family, were trying to raise $200,000 to cover the costs of the monument, and that they had been fundraising for over a decade. On April 9th, 2018, I announced on Twitter that I wanted to raise $10,000 in support of the monument project. I committed to personally donate $1,000 and asked others to join me in making a contribution. We surpassed my initial goal within the day, so I revised my goal to $20,000, which was met within a few more days. I continued to fundraise online and offline, including by organizing a film screening and panel discussion that included Black women journalists like Nicole Hannah-Jones, Jamila Lemieux, and Akiva Solomon. By the time the goal for funding the monument was met in July 2018, thousands of people across the US and Canada had donated with contributions as little as 75 cents. I want to say a word about the 75-cent donation. It came from a student of Greg Nishi, a middle school teacher in a Chicago public school, who heard about the Ida B. Wells Monument fundraising on Twitter. Greg talked with his students about Ida's life and work and about the fundraising happening to build the monument. The students wanted to get involved. Together, they began to raise funds. All in all, they donated over $400 to the project, and I believe that this is a fitting example of what Ida's life and work inspire. The children's people-powered grassroots fundraising effort is one I think Wells would be proud of. Ida B. Wells has been a personal touchstone for me over the years. I am so happy that this monument was created in her honor. I am so grateful to have played a small role in making this possible. Ida's effort to complete her autobiography has been described as her attempt to write herself into history. This monument, which people will no doubt visit for years to come from everywhere in the world, cements Ida's place in Chicago's history.
Since emancipation, there has been no one in American history who has demonstrated more courage, more commitment, more dedication, more strength for the cause of justice than Ida B. Wells. How appropriate and wonderful it is that she is receiving this monument. This is an incredibly important moment, not just in local history, but in American history, global history, because I think she is a giant. Thank all of you for doing the work to make it possible for more and more people to learn about the extraordinary work of Ida B. Wells. She was someone who literally changed the narrative about the need for justice, the shame of racial terror violence and lynching, the plight of women, and the struggle of Black people in this country to be fully valued, fully embraced, and have their rights fully honored. What a great day it is to have this monument unveiled to the extraordinary, the legendary Ida B. Wells, to Michelle Duster, her family, and all of you who have done the extraordinary work that you've done. Congratulations. You should know that we at the Equal Justice Initiative in Montgomery, Alabama, are celebrating this and sharing our enthusiasm for the great work you've done. All the best to each and every one of you, and congratulations.
Hello there, Tika Sumter here. I just want to say it's about time. The Ida B. Wells deserves everything and more. Her legacy has allowed women to, and Black people and our culture to move forward like never before. She was the record keeper before many. And she kept records of our people and the atrocities that were happening to them. Not only that, she took care of community, and usually single-handedly. You know, when the YMCA didn't, want people of color or Black people, didn't invite them in, she created her own Y. She was a mother. I mean, we know all the things that Miss Ida B. Wells was and is to this day. And I'm just so grateful to know her story, to give her all the praise that she deserves. I'm so grateful, and I'm so proud that I feel like she's part of all of our ancestry in a way. And I'm so grateful. So thank you, Michelle, and everyone who is blood relatives to her, for continuing to fight to keep her legacy alive. And I'm so absolutely excited, and I cannot wait to see this monument in person. So I hope everybody's enjoying themselves. And I know Ida B. Wells is shouting up in heaven right now. Just thank you, Ida.
Are on the back of your program if you'd like to join in. Good morning, good morning. I have to tell you that I am super nervous, and I'm sweating because it's warm in here, but also because I'm nervous. But anyway, and another reason is because 4 of the most powerful, incredible women, and some of you others, all of you as a matter of fact, are, let me clean that up, are joining us here today. We have the mayor of the city of Chicago. We have Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle. We have Alderman Sophia King, and we have Tracy Scott, of the CEO of the Chicago Housing Authority. I want you to welcome them to our event. It's been a long time coming, but we are finally here. Good morning, everyone. I am Anthony Rogers of Granite Development and co-chair of the Ida B. Wells Commemorative Art Committee, along with our development partner, the Community Builders, UGMA, and the Commemorative Art Committee. I would like to welcome you to the dedication of the Ida B. Wells Monument by Richard Hunt, Light of Truth. Forgive me. The Commemorative Art Committee was formed as a subcommittee of the Oakwood Shores Working Group and charged with the task of raising the funds for the design, fabrication, and installation of the sculpture on this site, the site of the former Ida B. Wells housing development, to so deservedly honor its namesake, Ida B. Wells. The Ida B. Wells public housing development was built in 1941. In response to community pressure, the development was named for the great journalist and civil rights activist who once lived in the community at 3624 South King Drive. The Ida B. Wells development was the largest of the demonstration developments built under Franklin Delano Roosevelt Public Works Program, the WPA, and was the first housing development in Chicago to incorporate a park which offered playgrounds and athletic fields. In its early years, it was the much desired location for Black working families to live. The Ida B. Wells housing development stood for 60 years. In 2002, it was demolished to make way for the new mixed-income Oakwood Shores community you stand in today. Over 800 units of mixed-income rental and for-sale housing have been constructed. This beautiful community center, new retail, the Marianos, the new CBIC Bank, other commercial and mixed-use structures, the Ellis Park Arts and Recreation Center have also been constructed as part of the redevelopment of this 99-acre site. Almost directly behind us, currently under construction, is the next phase of a mixed-use residential and commercial structure. The Oakwood Shores Working Group went through a master planning reset, and our next phase will include additional rental and for-sale housing, all to support different income levels. One of Ida B. Wells' philosophy was to maintain a community for all, whether you were poor, middle class, or the working class people in this community. We were all in this together. At some point when the redevelopment of this site is complete, an additional 1,500 housing units may be added. Former residents of the Ida B. Wells Public Housing Development, along with other community leaders and activists, have joined the charge to keep this legacy of Ida B. Wells alive in this community. Although her former house is a national landmark, it is little recognized. Other recent dedications include the name change of Congress Parkway to Ida B. Wells Drive. There's a large marker or boulder that's located on the corner of 37th and King Drive. And here today, the Richard Hunt sculpture in the Langley Boulevard Parkway at 37th Street. At this time, I want to recognize some of our committee members and our important donors. Members of the Commemorative Art Committee, would you please stand? Thank you. The Black Women's Blueprint, I don't believe there's anyone here from that organization. Marian Kaba, whose tribute you saw earlier. Nicole Hannah Jones is here. You're going to hear her speak in a little bit, and hold on to your seats because you know it's going to be something incredible. I want to recognize BPI, Business and Professional Interest for the Public Interest. They are the nonprofit fiscal agent that managed this entire process, including the grant writing, establishing bank accounts, paying vendors, setting up websites, hosting some of our initial committee and community meetings, planning planning and assisting us with our fundraising events. This was a big deal, and we're thankful that they handled this process with us through completion. Julie Brown is here. Oh, thank you. Okay. They also worked with the Open Societies Foundation and the Driehaus Foundation. And most importantly, 4,300 people donated pennies, nickels, dimes, quarters, dollars toward the fabrication and installation of this monument, including you in the audience. So we want to thank you so very much for contributing to our monument. Last but not least, I want to thank QCDC, Quad Communities Development Corporation, for planning and putting this event together. As a not-for-profit development entity, QCDC has been instrumental in the development of the Ellis Park Arts and Recreation Center that is just north of the Ida B. Wells Monument. This will be where some of the touchscreen technology, archival, and information regarding Ida B. Wells and her legacy will be located, so stay tuned. Thank you, Rhonda, Yvette, Tracy, Noel, Kay, for help, your entire team for helping us make this event a success. Okay, do you know that fewer than 3% of monuments in this country honor women. And monuments to black women are fewer than 1%. So put that in perspective. There's 1,000 monuments, 970 of them are dudes sitting on a horse with a hat and a sword waving around, or some other unflattering type of image as such. And then 30 of those 1,000 may be to women, and then less than 10 of those may be to women of color. So let's think about the significance of this dedication, and considering the latest tumult in this country regarding monuments honoring the founding fathers and the controversy behind them. Consider the significant contributions of black women, black people. And the underrepresentation is one that needs to be addressed. But this only happens with your support and participation. The next time someone asks you to donate to a cause, to erecting a monument or public art, and especially to a cause you do deeply believe in, do some research, donate, participate. Make sure that you see that happens. Some folks are reluctant because of the intangibility of an idea that may be public art that you don't quite grasp. You need to get over it and put your money where your mouth is and make these things happen. We are very proud and honored to have Richard Hunt on our team as a sculptor for this new monument. Today, Richard is here. Please join me in recognizing and applauding him. The monument, as Richard was designing it, sketching it, making wax and metal models of it, went through several design iterations. During the process, we tested Richard's flexibility and patience. Patience is French for nerves, okay? As we worked to establish the funds to pay for the sculpture. I think Richard went through 6 or 7 design iterations. He'd show us one thing, it was one piece. He'd show us the next time it was 3 pieces. He'd show us the next time, we'd say, oh, wow, Richard, that's big. We'd see it the next time, it was bigger. Then we'd see it after that, and we'd say, oh, Richard, that's tall. The next time we saw it, it was 5 feet taller. But as you can, the sculpture was installed on the site earlier this month on June 4th, and is located in the median green space at 37th and Langley Boulevard. Today, after this event, geez, the sun is trying to come out, which is amazing. You will see the bronze reliefs that depict images of Ida B. Wells, as well as some of the quotes that she wrote. The last pieces of the sculpture, the bronze reliefs, were installed in the sculpture this morning. When you get to see Richard's finished product, I'm sure you will agree it is absolutely stunning. I just want to thank Richard Hunt again. We reached our goal to raise the funds for the sculpture and have additional funds to plan a phase 2 as part of this monument. This may include markers of recognition of those whose activism helped and continues to help make these communities an even better place for black people, for all people to live. At installation, the Ida B. Wells Monument was donated to the city's public arts program and will be maintained into perpetuity. I would like to thank Nathan Mason of the Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events, DCASE, for guiding our committee through this process. Hey, Nathan. Okay. So at this time, I would like to introduce members of our team that are part of the Ida B. Wells legacy. They are former residents and continue to work to express the legacy of Ida B. Wells. We have former Chicago Housing Authority Commissioner Sandra Young is here to talk. I don't know if Claudice is here. No? Okay, Claudice Ware is not here, but we have Dr. Lamont Baker here. So if the two of you can find your way up to the stage so that you can say a few words, that would be great. Welcome them, please.
Good morning, good morning. I'm like Tony. I'm usually not nervous, on my years of being a part of the Chicago Housing Authority, they would always try to give me a script to read from. I say, no, just let me do it in my own words, because if I read the script, I'll forget everything. So today, guess what? Forgot everything. And so it is truly an honor to be here and stand before you guys today. This is an emotional moment for some of us, because as we commemorate Miss Ida B. Wells, we took some of that leadership, so her spirit is still flowing around. We've had some challenges, but we've gotten this far. But I want to tell you that we always look back at our past, because it helps us with the present and the future. So sometimes when you see people and they're dwelling on things and they're asking these questions, you're saying, well, why don't they just move on? Well, the passion in it is that, and then I'm going to get back on point. The passion is that in 1996, when the federal government came out and did a feasibility study, that prompted us in that feasibility study, when they came back in 1997, they said it would be more feasible to tear down and build back up. So, of course, that brought about a lot of fear. So we began to meet with building block and area representatives to talk about what this change means for us. And so one of the things that was so terrifying for us, because we wanted to take it to Shirley Newsom now, and they were like, oh, don't take it there. They're going to tell you, eat you, spit you up, and chew you out. So when we got there to talk about some of the things that we wanted to see happen with families, they embraced it. So I do want to say to Tony Pretwinkle, who at that time was the alderman of the ward, I want to thank you for residents having a seat at the table, and also for residents having a voice at the table. So I want to thank you for that. I want to thank Ms. Sophia King for picking up the torch, taking it and run with it, and she messed up and gave us her home number, so we called at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning all the time. But she will, one of the things she will do, she will call you back. And so I want to say, the residents of public housing, you guys, this is so significant and so important to them, because we, when we couldn't keep the name, when we were like, well, we want to keep the name of Ida B. Wells, they was like, no, it's associated with some other things that's going on. So what we found out is that in this development, we had 4 areas that had a historical status. So we had to figure out which area, and so with Tony's help, we wanted the LAC office to actually be the first place where you come to do a tour to see what was here actually before we started this whole plan for transformation, but that didn't fly. So what we did was, we talked about this commemorative, or how can we commemorate Miss Ida B. Wells, because we were having challenges with making a decision of where we're going to put the statue and everything, but the working group, I really want to praise the working group as well, because they have been very, 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 very helpful with us in this process. So Mr. Baker is actually right here. I am still working hard in this community. I just want to say to those and all, you know, we got a lot of history going on. We got 5 Black African Americans here in the city of Chicago. We have women. We have African-American young lady in the White House. So we are still striving. But one of my goals, I'm still in this community, you guys. I was young. Now I'm old, but I still look like God gave me some more energy, though. He done gave me some more energy. So I want to say thank you. But there is a second part to this, and we want you guys, when you find the time, to come back out, because you hear a lot of stories, but you need to hear our stories. I want to say thank
you. First of all, why are we here? One, to celebrate the icon and the courage and the resilience and the moxie of Ida B. Wells. But secondly, to put a narrative that you need to understand the story for those that, as my big brother Yusuf Hassan said, we're standing on sacred land. The Honorable Mayor, Honorable Chairperson, Tony Pratt-Winkle, Honorable Mayor, and other dignitaries and civic leaders here. Ida B. Wells, this is a touching moment because right there across the street is where my grandmother, Mamie Holmes, birthed one of the biggest families in Ida B. Wells. When I was a little puppy, standing on the fence. But who would have thought, young black boy who was ranked last in his high school class out of 513, would be here, standing before you. Who would have thought a young black boy who is the president of Friends of Track and Field under my fierce leader, Dr. Kenwright Worrell, who would have thought? So the narrative is, we are family. This community stands on people who have pride and struggled. And even the insurmountable odds, we still stood strong. Some of the great individuals come from Ida B. Wells. Science, corporate business, nuclear, bad man. Cordell Reed, I gotta put these glasses on, okay? We're gonna wrap this up. Wes Chamberlain, professional Major League Baseball player. The legendary jazz singer Dinah Washington. Dolores McBain, NBC Channel 5. Herb Kent, Olympian gold medalist, Sandra Nix. And my mama, who had multiple sclerosis, and even before she had multiple sclerosis, she was a dancer. She knew how to step. And you from the Wells, you gotta know how to step, okay? So my mother, she was one of the first blacks to win a dance contest on American Bandstand. So what I'm saying, and I'm about to close here, we're from a strong and brilliant race of people. There's many Ida B. Wells residents here. Can you just wave your hand? We're here. So, in conclusion, as I talk to one of the most prolific authors and poets in the land, Eugenie Perkins is from Ida B. Wells. I talked to him last night. He just wanted me to send a message to you. Hey, black child, do you know who you are? Who you really are? Do you know you can be what you want to be? If you try to be what you can be. Then he told me to tell you, hey, black child, be what you can, learn what you must learn, do what you can do, and tomorrow your nation will be what you want it to be. Never quit and never forget. Ida B. Wells is here.
Thank you very much. Those were inspiring words. At this moment, I would like to introduce our wonderful Fourth Ward Alderwoman, Ms. Sophia King. Alderman King.
Thank you. I was just quipping whether it be worse to go behind him or Miss Nicole Hannah-Jones. Still remains to be seen. It's important who we celebrate and who we choose to celebrate. I feel Ida B. Wells' spirit here today. I feel it a lot of times that fierce passion, Mayor. It's not me all the time, it's Ida B. Wells coming through me. Just remind yourself of that. Honored to join so many esteemed colleagues and other respected leaders in honoring Ida B. Wells. I may need these. With this Richard Hunt monument. Was in the Art Institute and saw your beautiful installation as I walked in the other day. Beautiful placement, and I'm sure that was strategic, so congratulations on that. Especially our strong Black women like Sandra Young, co-chair of this committee, former resident and community leader, President Preckwinkle, for all that you have done for this ward, for this city, for this county. Chief Scott for taking on the CHA. Mayor Lightfoot for your leadership, especially during these trying times. Appreciate strong Black women. I see also MWRD Commissioner Kim Dublique. Thank you for your leadership. Michelle Duster, your great-grandmother would be proud, would be very proud today. And Miss Ida Bay Wells, AKA Nicole Hannah-Jones, is in the house. Give it up for her, y'all. Please keep fighting and educating us, please. If Ida B. Wells is your spiritual godmother, then you are my play cousin, as they say, because she and you have invoked a spiritual awakening in me and I'm sure many others. I'd especially like to thank Alderman Shirley Newsom. Where is Alderman Newsom? Yes, who impressed upon me the importance of Ida B. Wells and is a big part of the reason we are here today. You see, she approached me when I first got into office about helping getting the Richard Hunt statue to Ida B. Wells. I see you approached a lot of other people as well to help get this funded. That led to the street naming so that we could have a ceremony to raise money. It started with an honorary street right down the street on 37th, which we passed relatively quickly and unassumingly. But we held it when we realized we might be able to get another street downtown. You see, when the uproar throughout the country arose over the controversial statues and monuments, Alderman Burke recommended changing Balboa back to 7th Street. Because Balboa is in my ward and not anywhere near his ward, I asked him to hold it. I was skeptical at the time, believe me. The League of Women Voters subsequently approached me about wanting to honor a woman for that same downtown street. I suggested Ida B. Wells. After the controversy continued to raise the idea of Ida B. Wells as a street downtown, we strategically changed to Congress so as not to mire a chance to honor and lift this great woman in the racial fight that ensued. So thank you, Alderman Newsom, for bringing us full circle. Thank you for teaching me. I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge the League of Women Voters of Chicago for standing with us during that tough fight. Today, we are gathered to witness the culmination of the 13 years of work of the Ida B. Wells Committee and other stakeholders to make sure the legacy of activist Ida B. Wells and the legacy of the housing development, which bore her name, would never be forgotten. Richard Hunt's The Light of Truth is a representation of the past as well as a new chapter of this sacred space. It is a monument that embodies the essence of who Ida B. Wells was, a truth teller. Ida B. Wells came to Chicago because she refused to be silenced in her advocacy against the horrific lynching. With her, with her life, she fought to make sure the light of justice would never be dimmed and the needs of the oppressed were never diminished. During her entire life in Chicago, she was an advocate for the Black community. She was a voice to the voiceless. She wrote for local newspapers. She advocated for women's suffrage. In fact, because of her work as a suffrage, Illinois in 1913 got the right to vote almost 10 years before the 19th Amendment in 1920. It was no coincidence that Chicago then elected its first African-American alderman in the city of Chicago, Oscar Dupree, in 1915. So we all stand on her shoulders. The Ida B. Wells Club championed her cause by making sure the development of public housing in the Bronzeville community would be named in her honor. The housing development was part of an effort in the early part of 20th century to provide the human right of safe and decent housing to all. The housing provided a safe haven for so many people that came to Chicago to escape the hopelessness of the South. For years, hundreds of families called Ida B. Wells home. On these grounds, around the corner from Ida B. Wells' home, the hopes and dreams of so many lived. If we talked to people like Sandra Young, you would find out about the real people that lived on the low end, as they say, or the 39ers. She would tell you that they had families just like ours, and most importantly, they wanted to make sure that they had a better future for their children. While the families did what they could to provide a better future, Chicago forgot its commitment to provide decent and affordable housing for all. 22 years ago, we recommitted ourselves to a new vision of public housing with a plan for transformation. We demolished public housing on this site and committed to providing new housing to keep the social contract alive. Although we are again struggling to keep this commitment as well, let's say it. However, these grounds, now known as Oakwood Shores, represent the continuation of Ida B. Wells' work. And this Richard Hunt Monument is a reminder to make sure we never forget the past and to make sure we always reaffirm our commitment to justice. The past and future are connected, and it is up to us to make sure that the light of justice is never extinguished. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman King. I would like us to welcome our mayor, Ms. Lori Lightfoot.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Feels a little bit like church. Little crowded, little hot. People hungry for a little bit of knowledge and enlightenment and hope. And that's what we are here today. We are here to lift up the legacy of our sister, Ida B. Wells. I want to say thank you to all the elected officials and the other distinguished guests who are here. Let me name a few. Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle, CHA CEO Tracy Scott, award-winning journalist and creator of the 1619 Project, Nicole Hannah-Jones. And let me just say, folks, we can't ever be afraid of the truth. We can't suppress the truth. The truth is the truth, and it will always, always set us free. So thank you for your work and your advocacy and standing strong. And if you let me go on a little bit longer, I'll say a few things about North Carolina, but I probably shouldn't get myself in trouble doing that. I want to recognize the Ida B. Wells Commemorative Art Committee co-chairs, Anthony Rogers and Sandra Young, former Ida B. Wells resident. You heard from the powerful testimony of Dr. Lamont Baker Edu. Let me also recognize Quinn Chapel African American Episcopal Church of Chicago senior pastor, Reverend James Moody. Thank you, Pastor. Author Jackie Woodson, violinist Wendy Indy, and you'll hear from student poet Isis Whitman, who I said, just go to your happy place. Don't be nervous. Just speak your truth. Michelle and Daniel Duster, the great-grandchildren of Ida B. Wells, working hard to keep her legacy alive. Thank you so much for everything. And I got to also say to the people of this community, the former residents of Ida B. Wells, you heard the powerful, I think, testimony of Dr. Lamont Baker Edu. We can't be here today talking about Ida B. Wells, divorced from the legacy of the people in the community that populated this community for so long, who have come back, who are still here, and make this community what it is. So let's give a round of applause to the people of this community. Today we're here in historic Bronzeville, this historic neighborhood, to immortalize the life and legacy of one of the most influential black women in American history. And Alderman King said it right. We are all standing on her shoulders. The ground that she walked on, the legacy and the history that she carved into this country. We are the beneficiaries of her life and legacy, and we dare not forget that. Ida B. Wells was a lifelong advocate for equity who fought tirelessly for the freedom and inclusion of black people all across America. Through her story, which I will share a little bit of with you today, it is clear why her name has become synonymous with civil rights activism and black excellence. Ida B. Wells was born into slavery in 1862 in Mississippi to James Madison Wells and Lizzie Warrenton, who encouraged her to take pride in her blackness and get involved politically. Now, folks, let's just pause for a moment and think about how radical that was. Back in that time, her parents encouraging her to be unapologetic about her blackness and take pride in it and never, never, never step back from anyone in asserting who she was and claiming her territory. Talk about radicalism. That is the manifestation of it. And to further develop her leadership skills and passion for politics, Ms. Wells briefly enrolled in Rusk College, a historically black liberal arts institution where her father served as a trustee after being emancipated. At just 16, her studies were interrupted, and her life was turned upside down because the yellow fever epidemic of 1878 took away both her parents and a younger sibling. Instead of abandoning her remaining 5 siblings, Miss Wells took them in. Now, I'm calling her Miss Wells because I'm old school. I'm not calling her Ida. We honor her even today by saying Miss Wells. She took in her siblings and became their primary caretaker, taking up a job as a teacher at a black elementary school, and eventually moved to Memphis, Tennessee, where her career as a journalist and civil rights activist began. Throughout the late 1880s and early 1890s, Miss Wells became increasingly outraged with the horrific implementation, the brutal and violent implementation of Jim Crow laws and the lack of protections for black people from that racial violence, especially one of the great sins of our country, and that's lynchings. To protest these horrific injustices, Miss Wells began traveling across the United States and even Great Britain to raise awareness about racial violence through both writing and speaking engagements. And let me just depart from my remarks here. Lynching, folks, common, celebrated by white America, festivals, picnics held as one of our own, hung from a tree, postcards created to send off as if they were greetings about the horrific, horrific killing, brutalization of black folks. Ida B. Wells unmasked those traditions and sought a better way for us as Americans and to stop the extrajudicial killing of black men and boys. This wasn't just adults, and it wasn't just men. It was women and boys. And we know what we know about that horrific legacy of our country because of Ida B. Wells. Her anti-lynching activism became so powerful and so moving that, of course, white folks rose up and exiled her from Memphis in 1892 and kept her away from the South for over 30 years. But she found a home here in our city, in Chicago, and we claim her as our own. She came here making sure that she would have the necessary work to continue demanding change and advocacy on behalf of black people, and yes, she did. Here in our city, Ms. Wells became one of the founders of the NAACP, started advocating for women's rights and women's suffrage and desegregation of public schools, and even founded the first black settlement house with her husband and members of their Bible study group. Because we all know we can't do anything without faith. And our faith tells us that we manifest our faith through our works, and that's exactly what Ida B. Wells did. All the way up into her death, Ms. Wells was always finding ways to fight for racial and gender equality and inclusion. And her contributions here in Chicago and across the country can never be forgotten. We claim her as a Chicagoan and as someone who devoted her life to improving conditions for blacks here, in our country, and across the world. Contributions that have created an environment where I am very clear that as a black woman and as a black woman mayor, I am here because of what she did, the path that she laid for all of us to be successful and claim leadership positions in government, in corporate world, in the private sector. And while we still have a long way to go before our equity and inclusion is fully rooted in everything that we do in our city, in our state, as a country, Ida B. Wells' lifelong fight for justice has put us that much closer to accomplishing our goal. May the monument we reveal today in her honor fill us with her fighting spirit every single time we are honored to pass by it. We need to continue diligently working to ensure that all Chicagoans know her name, but more importantly, know of her great works. Ida B. Wells is an essential part of our history, and we also have to strive to live up to her legacy. The fight against systemic racism continues. It's not over. We must continue the work of unmasking and eradicating systemic racism in all of its manifestations. This is the essential fight of our time. Make no mistake about it. In the name of Ida B. Wells and so many other freedom fighters across our time, the fight must continue. And let me end with this. I was moved by the opening video, as I'm sure many of you were. But I was particularly moved by the part where we talked about the 75-cent contribution from the student. That then spurred other contributions, and then spurred an interest in Ida B. Wells among those 7th and 8th graders, spurred on by their children, by their teachers. We must make sure that our children know who we are, that we are a great and glorious people, and that we have great and glorious leaders throughout our history in this country. We cannot afford to have another generation pass through CPS or the corridors of any other school without knowing who we are and claiming that legacy as our own. I remember so often when I was a young child, growing up, not seeing anybody who looked like me as a leader in a classroom, not hearing about anything about our legacy except for slavery. That's it. We've got to do better. That's on us as adults to make sure that we blaze that trail for our young people, that we say her name and the names of every other person who has had an impact profoundly on the history of Chicago, particularly for black and brown residents. That's our obligation, to make sure that we manifest and live up to the legacy of Ida B. Wells. We have to do that. We owe that to her, but importantly, we owe that to our children. So this is a glorious day that the Lord has made for us. God bless everyone who was involved in making this moment possible. And may the legacy of Ida B. Wells live on in our hearts, our words, but importantly, our deeds. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Lightfoot. Say her name, Ida B. Wells. Say her name, Ida B. Wells. I would like to next introduce Cook County Board President Toni Preckwinkle. During Toni Preckwinkle's tenure as alderwoman of this ward, she helped and formulate the committee that was put together to go about establishing this monument. So welcome Cook County Board President Toni Preckwinkle.
Thank you, Tony. Good morning. I'm very grateful to be here this morning. It's old times for me. As many of you know, I had the honor and the privilege of serving as alderman of this ward for almost 20 years, 19 years. And there are a lot of people in this audience who I know, and I'm grateful for their good work in helping us build and rebuild the 4th Ward. We're here to honor Ida B. Wells. But before I speak about Ms. Wells, I want to talk about a couple people who are in the audience. First of all, Sandra Young, who is co-chair along with Tony of the effort to bring this monument to our community. I got to know Sandra as a leader in Ida B. Wells and a citywide leader in the Chicago Housing Authority. And she was and is a conscientious and committed person to this community. And what really struck me was her willingness to embrace the change that was coming. And that took real courage. That took real courage. The change was coming. The question was whether we're going to be involved in that change and planning for that change, or whether we're going to be dragged kicking and screaming. And she chose involvement and brought the members of this community along with her. And I am deeply indebted to her for that. So thank you. And while we acknowledge those who are with us, I think we also need to acknowledge those who, as we say in our community, have gone to glory. And I want to acknowledge Izora Davis, who was also a public housing leader in this community, and who likewise, along with Sandra, embraced change. My successor, Shirley Newsom. Shirley was a leader of the broader community. And I have to honestly say, I always say, you know, I couldn't have been the leader I was in the 4th Ward without people like Sandra and Shirley. Because, you know, when you're alderman, if you can't count on community leaders to work with you, you're really in a pickle, right? And I was blessed in the almost 20 years that I was alderman of this ward to have wonderful community partners who I could count on to give me advice, to tell me when I screwed up, and to be supportive when I needed support. So I want to express my appreciation to Shirley as well. Thank you. And now, of course, Alderman King. You know, we talk about the spirit of Ida B. Wells. Alderman King spent a couple years trying to get a street name for Ida B. Wells. Not just here on the south side, but for the whole city. And that was quite an uphill battle. And I just want to thank her for that work. I want to thank her for her leadership in the Progressive Caucus. I want to thank her for her participation in the effort to get DuSable Drive named after DuSable. Hear, hear. And I think that if we're talking about the spirit of Ida B. Wells, it's surely embodied in our aldermen. So thank you. Richard Hunt. You know, he's a member of our own community, but I would argue he's also the preeminent American sculptor of our time. So thank you very much, Mr. Hunt. It's an honor that we're going to have one of your works of art in our community. Thank you so much. So Ida B. Wells was an extraordinary woman. She was a brilliant, brilliant journalist. She was the face of the anti-lynching movement in our country during her time, and she was a leader in the women's movement to get women the right to vote. And just one of those attributes would have been enough for us to say that she deserves our respect and admiration, and she was all three. So I just want to express my appreciation to her as one of our forebearers for the place that we enjoy here, the revitalization of Ida B. Wells, now Oakwood Shores, and for her spirit that continues to enable us and to support us as we seek justice in our own nation. Let's talk a little bit about monuments. You know, I think as a history teacher, what's troubling in this country is the extent to which we honor not just a very small segment of our population, white men, but white men who were slaveholders. You know, if you think about Washington Park and Jackson Park, they're named after presidents of the United States for sure, but slaveholding presidents of the United States, which I would argue is an affront to all of us. You know what I mean? What is this? Why are we lifting up slaveholders? You know? So I'm very grateful to be part of a celebration that lifts up a fighter for justice. As a history teacher, I would always try to get my students to remember that it was important that we remember our history and to remember that we stand on the shoulders of giants, and particularly today to remember that some of those giants were women. Thank you.
Thank you, President Kirkwinkle. At this moment, I would like to invite Chicago Housing Authority Chief Executive Officer Tracy Scott to join us.
Good morning. I want to thank the Ida B. Wells Commemorative Arts Committee for hosting this event and for your tenacity for us to stand here today, for us to be here today. I'm from the South. Those of you who don't know me, I'm from Atlanta. And the humidity is reminding me of that right now. But also, I'm reminded that growing up, every event began with lifting our voices and singing. And so today, I'm also reminded that there are many verses to that song, and if you don't know anything beyond the first verse, I encourage you to read the other verses because they will lift you every morning well out from our gloomy past until now we stand at last. So I'm happy to be here today and for this opportunity. I also want to acknowledge before I begin Mayor Lightfoot, President Preckwinkle, Alderman King, and Richard Hunt. Thank you, so honored. Michelle and Daniel Duster, congratulations for this honor. And current and former CHA residents and other speakers and guests. On behalf of the Board of Commissioners and the staff of the Chicago Housing Authority, I am so honored to be part of this special day. Ida B. Wells, as you have heard and you will continue to hear, and we hope that we hear more and more and more, is one of the most important and influential women in American history. She's also part of the legacy of the Chicago Housing Authority. The first public housing that was built in Chicago specifically for Black residents was named after her. It was a fight to get it done. It was a fight to get it named after her. And even in 1941, it represented the end of this fight for equity in the face of opposition. I know we talked about the park, but just some of the history here. At the time the original housing was built, the opposition wanted to put a park so that there was a barrier between those people and everybody else who lived here. And so we've broken down those barriers. This represents the breaking down that. So it's most fitting that this extraordinary monument to Ms. Wells, designed by Richard Hunt, stands in the midst of what we now call Oakwood Shores, a revitalized mixed-income community with approximately 850 families. I hope that Ms. Ida B. Wells Barnett would be proud of our ongoing work here at this site and throughout Chicago. Like so much of her journey and her life's work, the road towards revitalizing communities has been challenging and profoundly enriching. Ida B. Wells provides an example for us all of courage for truth-telling, her tenacity, and her commitment to fighting for a more just society. And may she continue, and may this sculpture, every time we pass it, inspire the work that we do each day, all of us, and especially at the Chicago Housing Authority, to make this city a more just, equitable, and inclusive place for all families. So I thank you once again for everyone who's involved, the committee especially, the residents who maintained their focus, eyes on the prize, for your work, and for making this monument a reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. I would like to introduce you to our next speaker, which is Ms. Nicole Hannah-Jones. She is a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, She is the creator of the Ida B. Wells Society for Investigative Reporting and the landmark 1619 project, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. Go ahead. She also provided a lot of support with our fundraising efforts. Please welcome Nicole Hannah-Jones.
Still morning. Good morning. I'm really honored to be here today. It's been a long time coming. I remember a couple of years ago when we met in this exact room when the family was finally able to have reached the fundraising goal for this very important monument. And it took a while, but we're here on this very momentous day. I want to first really thank the Ida B. Wells Commemorative Art Committee for all of your tireless work over many, many years to make this happen. All of the dignitaries here from the city, all of the dignitaries here from this community and the former Ida B. Wells houses. Of course, Richard Hunt, I didn't know that I'd ever get the honor of meeting you, so I'm just so grateful for that and for your work. Of course, want to thank Michelle and Dan Duster. I forced myself into their family, so I really appreciate you guys putting up with me. And all of the Duster family. And then last, I want to thank all of the people who worked really hard to put this day together, the people who set up the room, who cleaned the room, who planned this, like many of you. I'm sure like a lot of you in this room, my grandmother was a domestic. My grandmother was those invisible hands that made everything nice for everyone else, and we always have to acknowledge the people who make these spaces great for us. So it's kind of amazing to all be here together after what we've all gone through the last year. We should definitely acknowledge many of the people who supported this effort who didn't make it to be here with us today. And I want us to think, I'm going to be brief because I know you guys have sat through a lot already, a lot of very important remarks, but I want us to think about why do we create monuments? Why do we commemorate certain people and certain things and not others? We are about to unveil a monument to a Black woman who actually did believe in the ideals of this country. She didn't just talk about them, but she actually believed that she could fight to make them manifest. We create monuments because we want monuments to tell us publicly how we see ourselves as a nation, what we want to believe that we are, and who we think are important. So the fact that across this country, we don't have monuments to the enslaved, but we have monuments to those who enslaved them. That across this country, we don't have monuments to the people who died in the struggle for liberation, but actually to the people that they were having to fight against to get that liberation. And we are seeing those monuments coming down, monuments to enslavers and to bigots and to colonizers coming down all across the country, and we have to not leave an empty space there. We have to fill in those spaces with the spaces of the true Americans who actually fought for the ideals of liberty and freedom. And that's what we're doing today with this Ida B. Wells monument. So I could tell you a lot about Ida B. Wells, but I feel like if you're here, you know that this was an important American, not an important Black woman alone, that is an amazing thing. She was an important American. But I feel like to hold up her legacy, we have to talk about the precarious state that our democracy is in right now. Because we are actually fighting against the same type of tyranny and white supremacy that Ida B. Wells was fighting against all those years ago. Across the country, states are introducing a wave of voter suppression laws, more than 200 bills, in a wave of laws that we have not seen since the last 50 years with the Voter Rights Act in 1965. We have not seen this much threat to the fundamental right to a franchise that Ida B. Wells and so many others fought for since before I was born. And these are going hand in hand with memory laws that are being passed to not only make it harder for Black people to vote, but also make it harder to understand why it is hard for Black people to vote. These laws won't even allow us to teach about Ida B. Wells and lynching because they say it will make certain students uncomfortable if we confront the racist history of this country. So we have to leave here not just feeling good that we created a monument, but leave here feeling like we are charged to fulfill the mission of the woman whom we are trying to honor today. This is not a joke when I say this. I am a journalist, I don't speak in hyperbole. our democracy is on the brink of something very dangerous, and we are all charged to fight against it. I use Ida B. Wells as a template for my journalism. I'm a black girl who came from Waterloo, Iowa, which is about 4 hours from here, on the same migration that brought many of your ancestors to Chicago. If you've heard me speak before, you know I say our family was so country, we got off the train too early and didn't make it all the way to Chicago. But with that, I didn't grow up seeing an image of what I wanted to be. I didn't know any journalists. My family were working class folks. I didn't know any black journalists, and I certainly didn't know any black women investigative journalists. So I had to go back to a woman who was born into slavery to see a model of what I might become one day. And she was such an important model because she also was a model for liking to shop, liking fashion, and also holding power accountable. She exposed the racist underbelly of power. She was determined to tell the truth no matter how much it hurt her. My own newspaper, the New York Times, called her a slanderous and nasty-minded mulattress, which is what I call myself now on my Twitter bio. So she provided the template for not being worried about yourself, but being worried about the truth and understanding that powerful people have never wanted us to know the truth. They've never wanted us to understand how the levers of power are used against us. And that truth, as she said, is the way that we right the wrongs of our society. So as we commemorate Ida B. Wells Barnett, the baddest chick, I hope that today we can remember her legacy, but also that we are reminded of our own duty to carry on her fight. Because Ida B. Wells said, the sacredness of the ballot, without the sacredness of the ballot, there can be no sacredness of human life itself. And the same people who will take your ballot will take your life. So go out there and fight for your lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. At this time, I would like to introduce to you Michelle and Daniel Duster, the great-grandchildren of Ida B. Wells. They currently travel the country and even the world to speak of Ida and keep her legacy alive. The Commemorative Arts Committee just wants to let her know that we appreciate her persistence, their persistence and courage and trust in working together with us to complete this monument. Forward one.
Wow. I just want to take a moment to let this sink in.
Right.
This is very emotional for us, I'm sure you can imagine. We have to capture this.
You got to do it.
So we'll be brief. We actually timed this. 13 years ago, in 2008, my father, Donald Duster, his two brothers, Troy and Ben Duster, and I talked about the fact that the Ida B. Wells homes were being torn down. After 60 years of prominence on the south side of Chicago, in the neighborhood of their childhood, we agreed that their grandmother deserved a different kind of tribute for all that she contributed to the world. So the three of them urged me to write a letter to the mayor at that time. I'm sure some of you have that. You do it. So I was like, yeah, Michelle, you go ahead and write that letter. So I wrote that letter in 2008. Luckily, others shared our sentiment. My father and I were invited to attend a meeting of a committee that had already been formed. The Ida B. Wells Commemorative Art Committee decided together to go after what we considered an absolute pipe dream, to have world-renowned, Chicago-based artist Richard Hunt, the best in the world, to create a masterpiece in order to honor Ida. And we were ecstatic that he agreed to do the project. Through all of these years and several administrations, we have faced challenges, setbacks, triumphs, frustrations, and victories. Some were able to serve on the committee for a period of this journey, while a few dedicated soldiers, several who are in this room today, were able to see this historic project from the beginning to the end. And our family is eternally grateful to you for your commitment. And we have a couple of other family members in the audience today, my cousin Alice in the front, and my Aunt Muriel in the red in the front. And my brother David is hiding somewhere. So it's not easy to stay committed to one project for over a decade. And unfortunately, 2 members passed away during this journey. First, Leroy Square, early on into the project, and then my father, Donald, passed away in 2013. Some of you might remember him. We know they both, along with Ida B. Wells, are smiling down on us and filled with pride that we got this project done. And we are celebrating, and they are celebrating with us today. And luckily, my brother Dan, right here with the crutch, was more than willing to join the quest to honor our great-grandmother and has spent 8 years of his life involved with this project, which is one of the only 2 tributes to African-American women in the city of Chicago today. So we are all here to celebrate her historic moment.
Yeah. All right, thank you. So the crutch, I had a hip replacement last month, so I got brand new titanium right hip. So God is good for that, and God is good for the weather. So hopefully we'll get out of here quickly. I had a speech, but I'm going to deviate from what I was going to say. I was touched. So first off, people often ask about the lineage. So Ida B. Wells had 4 children, the youngest being Alfreda. Alfreda had 5 children, the middle one being Donald. Donald had 3 children, which is Michelle, David, and Daniel. So that is the lineage. That's our great-grandmother. But the crutch touched me today. As I was trying to get up from my chair, Mayor Lightfoot tried to help me up, which is nice and cute. She's like, what, 4'11", I'm 6'1", 200. But that goes to instincts. I've been on crutches a few times in my life. And the instinct of politicians is actually servitude. It's service. It's about helping others. And I know Sophia, I've known Kim, I've known Tony Preckwinkle for decades, and it's about service. And that's what Ida B. Wells was about helping people who need help. And the recognition that she's getting today is powerful. Is that I speak across the country about Ida B. Wells, and there's name recognition, but there's not recognition of what she did. It's like, oh, Ida B. Wells, right. She helped rescue the slaves, right? It's like, no. She invented the hot comb, right? No. So knowing what she actually did, and that, all due respect to Rosa Parks, if she's the mother of the civil rights movement, then Fannie Lou Hamer, Sojourner Truth are the grandmothers, and Ida B. Wells is the great-grandmother, and it goes on and on and on. And so we need to recognize that. And so to have a monument that can tell people her story, not just her name, is powerful. And so I'm honored and excited and humbled by this experience. And thank you for having a packed house on a hot, humid day. Like I said, feels like church. And we're just happy to be here. So thank you for coming out.
I want you to tell us about the significance of the poem in just a second. Okay. All right, hold on. Well, this portion of our program, we actually were going to be outdoors unveiling the reliefs that had been placed in the sculpture, but of course, because of the rain, as such, we decided, as you all know, that we're going to we're going to finish the event indoors. So at this time, and then, if you'd like, once we're done, we're going to do a ceremonial ribbon cutting in here for that purpose. Later on at the end of our program, we'll hear words from Reverend Moody. But at this time, I would like to introduce our poet. Okay. At this time, we would like to introduce poet Isis Whitman. Okay? Come on up, Isis. Isis is going to recite a poem called Queen of Our Race by Betty-Ola Fortson. Michelle is going to tell you about the significance of this poem. Go ahead, Michelle.
So really briefly, as we all have heard, my great-grandmother was a suffragist, and she traveled to Washington, D.C. in 1913 to participate in the suffrage parade, where they asked black women to march in the back of the parade. And she defied that request and inserted herself into the front and center of the Illinois delegation and marched in the parade. And Betty-Ola Fortson wrote a poem about her as a result of her marching in that parade in the front of the Illinois delegation.
Okay, good morning, y'all. I'm kind of a little nervous. Side by side with the white she walked. Step after step the Southerns bought. But Illinois is fond of order and grace, stuck to the black queen of our race. 'Tis true they able at this age to bar, but justice will soon send the doors ajar. And sit the black and white face to face, they will be seeing the queen of our race. Page after page in history you'll read, of one who was ready and able to lead, who set the nation on fire with her pace, and the Huron will be the queen of our race. Thank you.
Okay, promise we're almost done. I know we're all hot and excited. Okay, so just to conclude our program, we have a couple more speakers who will be very brief, I'm sure. I just wanted to give you a little bit of background that my great-grandmother, Ida B. Wells, first came to Chicago in 1893 in order to work with Frederick Douglass on a pamphlet in response to the exclusion of African Americans from the World's Fair. She and many others gave speeches and held meetings at Quinn Chapel African American Episcopal Church. It was formed in 1844. The church was the first African American congregation in the city. It played an important role in the abolition movement in Chicago and served as a station for the Underground Railroad. My great-grandfather, Ferdinand Barnett's newspaper, The Conservator, founded in 1878, was based at Quinn. With a long history of influence, the church was instrumental in founding Chicago Provident Hospital, Elam House, and Bethel AME Church, where my great-grandparents got married. In 1979, Quinn was listed in the National Register of Historic Places and is located at 24th and Wabash, for any of you who want to see this historic church. So we will hear from Jacqueline Woodson, who is an award-winning author of many books for adults and young people, including Brown Girl Dreaming and Red at the Bone. In 2020, she received a MacArthur Genius Fellowship. She is currently working on a piece that captures the life, times, work, and influence of Ida B. Wells. And immediately following Jacqueline, we will have the blessing from Reverend James M. Moody, who is the senior pastor of Quinn Chapel AME Church of Chicago. His ministry experience has focused on restoring church congregations and physical facilities. As the third assignment of this type in his 27-year ministerial career, Reverend Moody is restoring the historic Quinn Chapel to continue being the beacon in the community as well as a historic treasure for the city. So we're all about history today and the future as well. So Jacqueline?
Thank you.
This is going to be so brief. I want to first thank everyone in the room, and I'm so grateful to be here in Chicago from Brooklyn, the other Chicago. And I put on my jacket only because y'all were talking about church, and I noticed how even though it's so hot in here, everyone still wore their suit coat. So I'm trying not to be in New York and get up here looking raggedy without a suit coat on. But as Reverend Moody will tell you, it's going to come right back off the minute I get off this stage. I want to say that the ancestors are in the room with us. The ancestors who we've recently lost, and with saying that, thank y'all for getting vaccinated. I feel so much safer in this room. But the ancestors who we've lost through this pandemic, the ancestors who we've lost in the past, and I always like to take a moment just to think of one person we loved who we lost and let them know that they're on our mind, that we're in this room with them, they're in this room with us, and Ida is in this room with us. There is a saying that Black folks carry with us our wounds and our medicine, and this moment is a part of that. Our wounds are with us, the history of ourselves in this country. In keeping with that, having spent the past year and a half studying Ida B. Wells Barnett's life, I know that lynching wasn't just people, Black and brown bodies getting hung from trees. Lynching was the pummeling of Black and brown bodies, and that is still happening today. And so that work that Ida B. Wells Barnett was doing is work that still, as Nicole Hannah-Jones said, needs to keep on keeping on. And I wanted to end with a part from my memoir, Brown Girl Dreaming, because it speaks to this moment of Black joy and celebration that we're in. And I really want us to stay in this moment as we go to the monument, as we go to the ribbon cutting, knowing what a historical moment we are in today. At the end of the book, I talk about about many moments, and I say, I believe in one day and someday, and this perfect moment called now. Thank you.
To the committee, to these wonderful and esteemed leaders that have gathered with us, to the persons who have gathered here today that we would recognize the life of Ida B. Wells Barnett, to Michelle and Dan. This is the blessing of the Ida B. Wells Monument. Let us pray. Dear God, creator of the universe, the Father of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, we join together today to recognize the life and legacy of Ida B. Wells. As Ida's legacy reflects your presence, the presence of the God of justice. Just as your liberating light has shined through Ida's labors into the lives of countless others, just as Ida lived a life of transparent truth, allowing the world to know the character of the God of truth. Now we pray that this monument will direct the hearts of those who gaze upon it back to you, Lord, the God of justice, liberation, and truth, as we remember the life, labor, and legacy of Ida B. Wells. Now we bless and dedicate the work of the sculptor's hands to the honor and glory of your name, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen, 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 and amen. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Moody. At this time, we're going to do our ceremonial ribbon cutting right here. Michelle, Dan, President Preckwinkle, Alderman King, Miss Scott, Richard, if you all would like to stand in front of the stage, we're going to stretch a ribbon out, cut it. That would be our ceremonial ribbon cutting. Afterwards,